African Diaspora Grassroots voting on Africa Today, the #1 channel out of Washington, D.C. I am your host, Busi Matiko Anden, and I welcome you today to watch this show. We will be discussing everything leading up to the 2020 US. You can find us on all platforms, that is YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and our website, www.africtoday.com. Did you know you can also find us on Smart TV? Well, you can. Today we have an amazing guest who will be joining us. Can't wait for you to see who we have today, who will be discussing everything you need to know about your civic duty. Tune in. Welcome everyone back to Africa Today, and we have an amazing guest who is a leading community organizer out of Buffalo, New York. He is very active in the African diaspora. He's the executive director. He's an executive on the African Diaspora Development Initiative. He's also a representative on the Carpenters Union. He has done so much. He's actually also a trustee on Juneteenth. He will tell you more about what he has done. One thing you will know about Ras Jomo, he was at Addis Ababa when the diaspora became the sixth region. Ras Jomo, I welcome you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having us join your platform and your audience.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just looking forward to us taking care of business. You know, it's very serious times, and I'm hoping that everyone is ready to accept responsibility to make change and continue positive progress for our people and for generations to come.
Absolutely. And I mean, Ras Jomo, just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with the diaspora. I mean, naturally you're a diasporan, so that's by far, but just how you got active in different communities. I mean, regardless of nationalities, whether Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean, African-American, African from the continents, African transplants. You have been very active in the community. So tell us more about your background. Introduce us to Ras Jomo.
All right. I'm born and raised in America, Buffalo, New York. My grandparents come from the South. They were part of the migration after the era of sharecropping, the age of industrialization. Many families from the South moved to the North. They came to cities like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit. Buffalo was one of those places. The steel industry opened up a lot of opportunities for Africans in America, especially for those who were tied to the land, things of that nature. As a young person, had a chance to go to school, went to college, and as I began to get a little older, got more questions in my mind. What happened to Black people all over America? I traveled a lot in America as a youth, and just a lot of things about our communities just began to stick out to me, like everywhere I went, whether it was the North, South, the Midwest. As I got older, I had a chance to do a little traveling in the Caribbean and getting exposed to more histories and more cultures, and just kind of, really asking what happened to us, like not only in America, what happened to us like all over the world. That began to propel me to just really find out, what happened to our people. Were we always, from America? Were there different migrations of Black people?
So you consider yourself an anthropologist?
I just wanted to know what happened. You know what I mean? Like you begin to read the history of what happened to Black people in the Caribbean, and then you start finding some common connecting points. How many of us were scattered, to the four corners of the earth. Those people who come from the Caribbean, those people who come from Central America, those people in North America. They were primarily taken from the West African countries, the modern day countries of Mali, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Ghana, Mauritania, Gabon, Cameroon, all those pretty much 14, 15 West African modern countries. Those people ended
Yes.
up in the Caribbean and in North America. And you move a little further south and you find out the people who were taken to Central and South America are more from Angola, Central African Republic. People were transported all throughout Africa and shipped off. And some people misnomer and call them slave castles, but they're dungeons, they're prison forts. So many of these celebrated places are the last connecting points for Africans who were stolen and sent to the diaspora. And that's just from the west side of Africa. Similar things took place in the east. Same things took place in Madagascar, how people in the Middle East and, different countries, So
Yes, giving us a history story.
yeah. So
Okay.
those things and those questions, it kind of opened me up. And then it also, the questions about what happened to us throughout the epochs of time. I'm sure we're going to get into that as we talk about voting and why that is so important. In this 21st century, year 2020, we want to be able to see clear. So I'm sure we'll get into it a little later on.
Absolutely. I'm just curious. Have you tried the ancestry.com DNA stuff or
Now,
no?
I haven't tried it yet, but some spiritual things I've been talking, and the spiritual stuff is getting even more accurate than the DNA. I'm starting to find out.
Okay,
I'm
okay. So I was just
I'm a
curious because
musician. Yeah, I'm a
you seem to be
musician.
the
I was raised here. I started percussion and drums when I was young. One of the other studies is that I also began to study traditional African drum and music, which is what led to
How
understanding
long have you
history.
been doing that? How long have you been doing the African drumming?
African drumming maybe since about 1990, 1991. So what is that?
Wow, 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 wow. And have you traveled have you traveled drumming
Yeah,
studied it?
my drums have taken me all over the world, even back to Africa. Even traveling to Africa, when I'm there, I get a chance to play music and have done things in Ethiopia with different musicians. We did one show, a reggae by the Nile, and we worked with a lot of different Africans from around the continent. And I did like a lot of the musical and the percussion underscoring, performing in Addis Ababa, the national stadium and stuff like that. So it was a good thing to be
Okay,
able to work with
okay.
musicians from Ethiopia, Ghana, and different parts of Africa, the Caribbean as well. So music is actually
Wonderful.
one of the greatest educators, especially for our people. There's a lot of culture in
Yes.
music, especially traditional music. So that has, I think,
Yes.
been one of my greatest teachers.
Okay. Sounds, I mean, you have been you're well traveled, you've assimilated in the different communities you've lived in, and you've studied it from the point of the locals. I mean,
Yeah,
which makes you
correct.
really, it must be fun, right?
Yeah, it has been more education than going to any institution. Spending time with real people, spending time listening to elders, spending time learning our oral history from our own perspective. And sometimes we just use Western knowledge to supplement it, but it's really good to hear
Yes,
it from the source. And I think that is
from
really
the
one of the
source.
keys. That really needs to take place even now, as we're doing right now. We're talking face to face, not just reading it in a book, but we're getting a chance to really see it, hear it, feel it, and touch it. And I think that
Well,
is really,
technology
really,
has brought everything
yes,
together seemingly.
yes,
I mean, you're in Buffalo, I'm in Long Island, and we are
yeah,
still able to have this discussion,
all over the
And
world, right,
our studio, our parent studio is in Washington D.C. So you
right,
can imagine how
yeah.
everything is coming together. I mean, who would have known, right?
Yeah. It's
Yes.
the age.
So how have you been keeping during this unprecedented times?
Well, I tell you what has been keeping me is music. I'm also a radio DJ, and I focus on
Okay.
international music. So,
Yes.
music has the key to everything. So I give thanks to the creativity in African people because we always, got something to soothe the soul. So, Music has also allowed us to work with over the last few months with different artists, R&B artists, reggae artists, African artists from all over the world. And I think it's very nice to really sit and hear what even inspirational people are feeling, what they're going through. Even the whole idea, some people it's hitting them hard, where it's forcing some a little bit too alone and it's making them a little depressed. But there's some people who are
Yes.
getting some very clear visions. We had a chance to talk to many of them, and their creativity is heights right now. So for many people at this time, it's really
Amazing.
refocusing. Yeah, yeah. It'll
Yes,
be
it's
interesting to see
like
what
kind
their
of.
music comes out.
Yes. Wow. I mean, and that was going to lead me to to my next question to you. You're a carpenter.
Yeah,
I mean, you're a carpenter and you're actually an elected official too, right? And you're in a number of boards and trustees.
yeah,
So tell us more about that. I mean, so how you juggle all this and um, I mean, because it all ties into the
yeah.
whole notion of voting, you know?
Right. Well, definitely. Well, I'm a union carpenter, local 276. I am also North Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters. I am a organizer. I work with doing business and helping grow the union, working with our membership. And we have about 30,000 members in the North Atlantic
Wow.
States. So from New York
And the
State
North,
to
which is okay. I was going to ask you
okay.
what region
Yeah.
comprises the North
hmm
Atlantic states.
Yeah. New York State and all the New England states. So we all work together and we work on apprenticeship training people who are desirous of being professional carpenters, and then making sure that we provide good living wages for people, and also giving people a chance to work and retire with dignity, good benefits, and making sure that you have some money to give you a quality of life after retiring. So we believe in training people, getting them to be professionals, and then making sure that you can retire with dignity. And I think that that's one of the greater goals of being able to have access to equity, access to living wage. Um, that's what happens when you are organized and proactive in society. You can kind of help plan your trajectory in life. Um, but those things don't come by mistake. You really have to work and organize
Hmm.
to have those things, and you also have to work to protect all of your gains, because we live in a society where people are always trying to take things from other people. That's just the kind of world we live in.
It's
So you also
unfortunate,
have to
right?
stay organized and vigilant. Yes, yes.
Wow, wow, wow. I was just that while we were speaking, I just had a flashback because I know I read noticed you're a part of Juneteenth. Juneteenth. This year,
Yeah.
Juneteenth has stood out more than people. We didn't know. Many people did not know what Juneteenth
Right.
is, and
Yeah.
now it's been going on for a long time. And you're actually a member of Juneteenth in Albany. I mean, in Buffalo, the biggest
hmm
Juneteenth celebration or so.
Yes.
Or yeah, please tell us more about that.
Okay. Well, I am the executive vice president of the Juneteenth Festival of Buffalo. Juneteenth is one of the times that is commemorated in America. In 1863, it was passed that Africans who were in the states that rebelled against the Union in the Confederate States, that they were supposed to emancipate all of those Africans who were enslaved. Okay, and I want us to
Mhm.
use the word enslaved and not just slaves. It's not as though people were born slaves or God made you to be slave.
Mhm.
No, other people enslaved us. And I think that we
Mhm.
should, just make sure that we speak, accurately, so that we understand what happened. And those ones were forced to emancipate us. But inside of Texas, actually in Galveston, Texas, on June 19th, 1865, a general had to be sent there to make sure that they let people go who were supposed to have been freed 2 years ago. So, that's one of the things that has happened in America. Sometimes you have laws and legislations, but without proper enforcement and without staying politically and socially vigilant, just because laws are passed, it does not mean that you're going to be guaranteed the benefits. It's going to be up to you to be responsible, to make sure that you get what you deserve, and that's a part of the struggle. This year, because of COVID-19. uh, all of the festivals were pretty much canceled because everyone had to be social distance. So this is the first year that we did our festival uh, utilizing technology. You know, it's not mythology anymore. We're in the age of science and technology, and we as people, especially as Africans, we have to embrace it and use the tool to help us get what we need. But at the same time, we also have the executions of persons like George Floyd and Sister Brianna. I mean, just the names just go on and on and on. It's almost heartbreaking just to start mentioning all the names of people, and that created another I don't know, another flashpoint for movement in this country, and not just this country but the whole world. So at that same time, many people in America began to pay attention to what Black people have been going through. And Juneteenth is one of those things. As a matter of fact, our Juneteenth was even featured on Good Morning America. We've been doing it in Buffalo since 1976. This was our 45th consecutive. Coincidentally, those numbers collide or coincide. But this was our 45th year, and many people from BBC, everyone was interviewing and talking to us about.
Wow, you got international coverage
Oh,
of
definitely,
this year's
definitely.
Juneteenth.
Yeah. We have one of the biggest ones in America because we don't just focus on what took place in America. We also focus on what took place in the Caribbean. We focus on what took place in Africa because we would not be celebrating the freedom of people who were enslaved unless we
So
were
you focus
stolen
on the
in the first place.
on what people can do,
Oh yeah.
like how they can change their perception.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that how
Of course.
okay.
Well, I think that one many years, just like now, we're at a time currently where many people are celebrating Emancipation Day. Many people who were colonized by the British, especially many people who were raised in the islands, that story is the same. It's not only in America. That's what happened in Jamaica. That's what happened in Puerto Rico. That's what happened in Cuba. That's what happened in Haiti. That's what happened in Costa Rica. The Black people who are in all of these countries were evidence of stolen property. And whether it was the French, whether it was the Spanish, or whether it was the British, or we here in America, the story is the same. People were forcibly stolen, kidnapped.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Uh, and if we don't have
Is
like
that where
past,
the Bob Marley song "Buffalo Soldier"? Is that where why? Is that where it was
well,
originated?
we like to claim that now. That's what we said he was thinking about us.
It's
But
a myth.
realistically, there's another set of Africans who were fighting and doing things with the United States, fighting many times for their rights, but at the same time, uh, some of them were used to do some other things that even not so good. In our books, was forced to remove some of the natives off of their land. So there's a dual side of who and what the Buffalo Soldiers had to do. But in Bob Marley's song, what he's saying in the beginning, he's saying fighting on arrival, fighting for survival, meaning that from the time Africans were brought here, people always had the rebellious spirit that we need to be free, proud, and productive people, and that we were not made to be enslaved. So there has always been a resistance movement. I had to make sure I wore my things today. We're also celebrating the 100th year of Marcus Mosiah Garvey setting up the red, black, and green flag and working with the UNIAACL, United Negro Improvement Association, and African Communities Leagues. And before we talked today, I had a chance to go through one of his books, and he has a whole section about how important it is for us to be concerned and understanding politics, governing, and how important it is for us to know and participate in legal elections. So it's all kind of adding up. It's like we have to maximize on the lessons that our elders and our ancestors passed, and as we commemorate the life and the legacy and the struggle of John Lewis. Just it's a very interesting time in history right now. There's so many things happening
Awesome,
at one time.
awesome.
And we're
I know,
still
and I was all bringing
focused.
this up so that we transition into
Yeah, yeah,
voting. So tell me what you have done to really push your community to vote and why it's important to vote. I mean,
yeah,
it's clear that you've been active in the voting
Yeah.
pushing people to vote.
Yeah. Well, it's very important. And I want to ask you a question. And
Yes.
when you talk about civil rights, you talk about maybe one of the greatest American leaders known all over the world for peace and nonviolence and civil rights. What name comes to your mind? One of the greatest Black American.
Martin Luther King Jr.
You ding ding ding. You win the prize. Okay, this is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's last book,
Mhm.
and it's Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And coincidentally, he wrote this book on the island of Jamaica in 1967. He was kind of moving away from the civil rights movement, and he was moving more towards economic, social, and living justice for all people. And he was there taking time to reflect and regather, and he began to coin, you know, a whole lot of thoughts and philosophies, which is a whole lot different than the I Have a Dream Martin Luther King. This was a more progressed, more mature, and I think that it's dangerous if we get stuck at the I Have a Dream Martin Luther King. This Martin Luther King, this book has been out of print for about 10 years. This book here, you have to dive inside of this because it's almost
Does he
though
talk
he's
about
speaking.
voting? Is it telling you about people telling people to vote?
Oh, he's talking about voting. He's talking about the political structure. He's talking about economic structure. And he's also talking about white backlash, which is what we are experiencing right now since President Obama was elected. And you can see the concise move of many branches of government to kind of repeal every progressive act that was achieved under President Obama's administration and for those who worked in cooperation, things like universal health care, things like making sure that even workers have the ability to have organized labor, fair work for fair pay and fair pay for fair work, those type of things. Without understanding like a lot of the histories in America, it's really hard for many people to actually see clearly. And I think that is really one of the dangers of us not knowing, especially as Black people, what happened to us. For Africans in America, we
Yeah,
need to know
I
what happened
understand
to
that,
us.
but sometimes the average person might not have a chance to. I mean, we encourage them to read, but not everybody is naturally a born reader. So, what practical things would you encourage someone to do who's like, now this is an important election coming up, you
Mhm.
know? Uh, some people are scared and thinking that, oh, there's a myth going around that absentee ballots are being rigged,
Mhm. Mhm.
what would you tell that person who wants to vote but is nervous, and yet
Well,
it's important
yeah.
that they vote?
Well, I mean, there's about three questions that you have in there that are layered. One of the things I would tell everyone to do right now, especially since most people have a little more time on their hands than before, I think that it would be important, especially for Black people. Black people. When I say Black people, I use the word Black African interchangeably. When I say African, I mean Africans and American, African Caribbean, African, Latinx Africans from the continent. But I think that it's important to understand the politics of what happened in America. I think it would be nice if you can try to Google or watch some things on Reconstruction. I think you need to understand what took place early in history when Black people were first given the chance to vote, what took place when we were organized to vote, and what also took place to stop us from voting. I think that you need to understand things like poll taxes, taking poll tests. You need to understand what type of rules and what type of tricks were enacted to try to disenfranchise Black people from voting. Marcus Garvey speaks about that in his book, I'm reading Message to the People. He's talking about wherever we have the chance to vote, we should make sure that we prepare ourselves to do it. Reverend Dr. King was trying to practice things in the most legal and the most civil way as possible. All right. That is what was taking place here in the 60s. So that period being like a second Reconstruction. Well, many people are saying that this is probably the third Reconstruction of restructuring America. So if you have not heard these words, or if you have not heard these phrases, You got a few hours every day that we all sitting at home getting a little bit bored, or everybody's not out working. I would encourage everybody to maybe just Google and watch some of the speeches. Listen to some of the things that Reverend Dr. King was saying. Let this technology help us right now. If you weren't there in the 60s, there are many people who are alive in the 60s, but who were not conscious of what was happening.
Jomo, because of just in the interest of time, because many of the people we're talking to are people who are like, some of them are not very educated and that kind of thing. So we're just trying to encourage them to go to the vote and to the polls. So those are the types of people we're trying to reach. Not that many of them are not that intellectual, and so we're just trying to see what can you do what have you been doing in your community to push them to go and vote. You I see you're a council representative. What things have you been doing?
Well, the same thing with our membership. First, we have to make sure that whatever is legal for us to do, that we get ourselves registered before the deadline. And I was talking about utilizing the internet because many people do not read, but when you hear speeches, you can get educated the same way. And that's the same thing I started off the show with. Our oral tradition is even more important sometimes than always reading it in a book. So being able to follow Black media, being able to listen to your Black news, being able to follow your Black newspapers, listen to Black radio. You have to engage yourself around people who understand our history. I believe that churches, civic organizations, we're not right now matriculating in school. Many people are on break. Many people are not going back. So it's going to have to go back to us talking to each other again. It's going to have to be a verbal face-to-face or utilizing technology, which is why I keep going back to looking at videos and trying to follow the news and listen to intellectual people talk on the radio, whether you know it or not yourself. Listening to conversation, communication is a very good balance, and it allows you to learn fast. And what happens is there are many organized young people, old people who have been reading, who have been studying, just to listen to them. Just as African people, when it's time to know something, everybody didn't graduate from school, but we communicate, we talk. In America, all of the people from the South, they talk. In the Caribbean islands, people in the country, they talk. In Africa, you say good morning, you talk. So in this time of shelter in place, we need to talk to each other about what do we as a community need. And that is going to start locally.
I can't wait to hear what we're going to say after the break. Okay.
ESYDA returned to play summer clinics. Recreation, Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Travel Team, EDP, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Time, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free mask and water bottle. Register today at esyda.org. Email info@esyda. Phone 248-765-9369. Office 301-800-7848. Toll free 800-995-5532. Free registration for all summer clinics. All new players need buy uniforms. We're following COVID-19 soccer guidelines. Small group practice with 9 players and 1 coach. For more information, go to esyda.org.
African Diaspora Grassroots Voting, and I welcome back my dear guest, Ras Jomo. Ras Jomo, you've been educating us on the importance of knowing what's going on and reading and, just being informed. That's what my takeaway from you has been, And so, what I would also like to ask you is, have you been have you been involved in taking people who cannot get to the poll stations? What has been done in your community to deal with some of the logistical things?
One of the greatest things right now is there's a large push on our radio programs. Many of the community activists, many people have been in the streets protesting. But the next level is that for those who have anger, for those who see the need for change, the next important question is, are you voting? Because if you're angry, if you're upset and you're not voting, then you're not using all of your tools to help effectuate change in your community. As we look at what's happening in the presidency, we look at what's happening in the federal government, even if you look at what happens in the state government, there's a phrase that says all politics is local. You have to understand exactly how your local communities, you have to understand how your local vote helps put people in position to represent your interests. So as young people are out marching, even older people, the big thing that's happening in our city is we're trying to make sure that there are people who are registering everyone to vote before the deadline for this November's election. Those are one of the main things that is taking place presently. When it is time to vote, there are many coalitions organizing with churches, organizing with community groups to make sure that people, for those who don't use mail-in ballots, making sure that they have access to their polling places. We're in New York State, so our rules don't change as frequently as other states. We are pretty people friendly. But if you look at what's happening in America, especially in many of the southern states, look at the primary, look at what has taken place in Georgia and some of the other states over the last few months for those who have had primaries. You can see how polling places were changed, rules and laws were changed. So it's very important right now that where everyone is, that they make sure that they're properly registered. And I think that for those who are not going to do ballots, you need to know from early where your polling places will be, because all of these things, as we have seen in America, there's a lot of trickery involved many times. And in an election like this, there are bound to be problems that come up. So trying to make sure that you can do the best you can to qualify yourself and to make sure that you have a voice. And
qualifying yourself.
Yeah. And the other thing too is
like people who are moving, some people moving from one state to another,
right,
or even from residences.
Or one neighborhood. If you move to a different location and you do not change your address, or you think that you moved, so I'm going to find out where everyone else in the community is voting. If you're not registered there, that's a problem. So what happens is we really need to do more communal education. We need to make sure that we have everyone qualified so that their vote counts. And on the break, just as we're saying that is the exact phrase that was inside of Marcus Garvey's book. He says, always make your vote count for bringing about the reforms you and others think are right for your community. Never exchange it for money. You should see that every citizen that has a vote does vote on election day, especially when you have reforms to be enacted. We're talking about police reform. We're still talking about voting and civil rights in the 21st century. We're talking about making sure that our communities are represented. I mean, voting is one thing, but this Census 2020 is very important as well.
Yeah, the census. Yes, I mean, it's very important that people get involved, know what's going on with the census.
These are the type of things that can help change the education in our environments. These are the type of things that can change quality of life in our neighborhoods. These are the type of things that can help us get access to funding for greater health care, access to lunch programs. There are so many things that are tied to us being qualified to vote, and at the same time making sure that we're represented as far as
What
numbers.
are some of the things that could qualify you to vote? What are the
Well,
qualifiers you're talking about?
okay, for instance, you're able to vote at 18, but in many states you can actually begin to register at 17 and 16, because everyone does not automatically
17 or 16.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. What you can begin to fill out your paperwork there, so that way when you're on your 18th birthday, you are already prepared. But all states might not follow that same type of ruling system. People who were felons, people who have served time, um, those people have the right to get, once their time has been served, they have the ability to get themselves back into the voting system. And many times they do not put
Wow, most
themselves
times we
back.
think about felons, ex-convicts cannot vote. That's what many of us believe, you know?
That's what we believe, but just because we believe it don't mean it is true. And
Exactly.
what is happening, so that goes back again to this whole education process and this whole idea of making sure that we qualify ourselves when we are able to. So that goes back again to our churches. It goes back again to our civic organizations. It goes back again to following your local media, especially your Black media, because other people are not trying to give you the keys to empower yourself. That's going to have to happen from an internal source. And that's why I think it's important, even for the diaspora, to be communicating now. Many people from countries where voting is overtly oppressed really take a lot of pride in being able to become a U.S. citizen and actually be able to freely
Yes.
cast your vote. Those Africans who have been here in America, especially our young people, we have to re-inspire them to use
Yes, I was
every
going to
tool
say that
there.
the younger generation diasporans need to be re-energized, because
Yeah,
when I see, like, right now, even the Black Lives Matter, I'm
yeah,
seeing white kids at the front line pushing,
right,
you know, as
right,
well. And what can be done to inspire this younger generation to vote? Because it's important. They need somebody needs to, because it's kind of like they're giving up, you know.
right.
And so
Well,
what things have you been doing to re-energize that momentum, bring back that momentum?
Well, one of the things that I've communicated before is there are many organizations who are now at these rallies trying to make sure that the young people get themselves are registered to vote. One of the other things is just the young people in the community. Many many of the young Africans here in America have been frustrated with society for so long
Mhm.
that they have
Yeah.
sometimes run out of hope. But those young people who see police abuse daily, many people are just now seeing it now, based upon what has been on television. But in
Mhm.
most Black communities, the young people have been feeling this stress for years. And they've been trying to communicate effectively to other people about the unfairness of law enforcement or people who are abusing their authority. These things didn't just happen because it was shown on television. These things have been going on for generations. So, and many people have grown tired of almost complaining and crying. It's as though no one seems to have heard you. The police chiefs, the mayors, the governors. At the same time, we have many people, many mayors, and many even police officers are fighting to make sure that things are
Yeah,
done more
so
effectively.
there are some bad apples, and then there are good apples that are
But
really
then
doing stuff.
there's administration that has allowed these things to take place for decades, and I think that is really what has frustrated young people. If we're honest, we have to realize that for the young people who have been living in the streets, feeling the brunt of things being done wrong, that has given them that feeling of hopelessness, and I think that we have to
So
encourage
what
them
can
to
we
keep
do
on fighting.
between now? We don't have much time, but
Yeah,
I mean, running out towards
yeah,
November. November is
yeah,
round the corner.
right
So
around
what
the
can
corner.
be done right now to expedite this? You know, how can we galvanize the diasporans to go and
Mhm.
vote? Because it's important. Those every vote counts. You
Yeah.
know, even though, yes, telling your neighbor to vote, telling your neighbor, every vote counts. So what can we do to do that?
We I think that one of the greatest messages we can tell them right now, especially to those young ones who are frustrated, I think that we have the ability to tell them right now that if the right people are put in power, that we have the ability to change things that have been wrong. We have the ability to secure rights of others. And with all of your anger and frustration, let's turn it into the right tool to effectuate change. And the safest tool is to be able to vote. That is the message I believe that young people have to hear from their family. And they have to also hear it from the elders and from those who might be educated, from those who might not normally talk to those young people on the streets. I think that now is the greatest time that if we say that we need our young people, let us stop our cars on the corners and let us engage them and see if we can conversate with them. Let those of us, as we said before, everyone might not be educated, everyone might not be eloquent, everyone might not have went to any university. Well, for all of you who have went to university, for all of you who have the ability to go to church or go to the mosque on Friday or to the temple on Saturday, why don't you stop your cars on some of these corners and make sure that those young people that you've been seeing for the last few years stand on the corner? Why don't you ask them how they're doing and then ask them, are they prepared to vote? Are they prepared to take their destiny into their own hands? The saving grace that we're looking for is going to come to us interacting with us. So I'm not looking for anybody else to save us. I'm looking for us to inspire us. I'm looking for us to be legendary. And we can be legendary by grabbing our own people, our own nieces, nephews, cousins, and showing them, hey,
Carrying
you
it
know,
home.
oh yeah. And in our community, the same ones that we walk past every day, let us start talking to them as we lead up to October. Make sure that everyone is registered well before November. Make sure that the people are prepared. If we're really serious about change, and if we're really serious about making sure that there's a better future for our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, nephews, and cousins, and for all of those other ones who will come to the shores of America, for those who are in America who might have lost hope, let us make sure that we rally ourselves together and show up as a force. If voting wasn't important, people would not spend so much time trying to disenfranchise us.
Interesting. So what work are you doing internationally to try to bridge, to build bridges with the diaspora?
Well, one of the things I'm taking a lot of pride in is working with the former ambassador from the African Union, Dr. Erikana Chihombori Kwao. There's an organization, ADDI, and if you want to look up that online, it's ADDI.org. And this whole ability is to create an interface of cooperation, interface of almost like a one-stop shop where Africans from all over, Africans from America, Africans from the Caribbean, Africans from Latin America, Africans from the continent, can begin to come together, galvanize their efforts, galvanize their talents, and at the same time secure ourselves where we are, and also build a better bridge of helping to develop continental Africa as well. And I believe that is very important as we communicated. One of the things that have actually helped me a lot is getting a chance to actually study and find out what happened to other Africans over the last 400 or 500 years. And as we begin to tell our stories, we'll find out that we have common issues, but we also have a common victory. And that common victory is us working together for the interests of ourselves, on behalf of our ancestors, and on behalf of those who are coming after us. So if we really want to be true to ourselves, and if we really want to make a change, the opportune time right now is for us to work together. And every tool that we have at our disposal, let us use that tool to secure our local rights. Let us secure our county rights. Let us secure our state rights. And let us put proper people in position to guide this country so that we can help shape the world for a better future. We have that power locally. We as individuals have that power. I think that we have to realize it. We have to actualize it. And you know what else? I think that we're going to be empowered when we take that step and reach out to those young people who are on the corners, the young people who are in the parks, the young people who you see who are not as industrious as they can be. I believe that if we reach out and show them that we're in this together, I believe that we're going to really, we're going to surprise ourselves at what can take place when we begin to work together for our own best interests.
Wow, thank you so much. As we wrap up, I'd like to thank Ras Jomo for sharing with us his thoughts and his opinions with regards to voting, with regards to the African community and the African American diaspora, the diaspora. I mean, Russ Jomo, thank you so much for your time. And what are your closing remarks for getting, one word would you tell people to say as we part?
Can I say 2 words? Get involved. Get involved.
Get involved.
You have to get involved.
Okay, get involved. Thank you so much, Russ Jomo, for your time. It's a pleasure. And I would like to thank everyone for coming on Afrique today, for supporting our African Diaspora Grassroots voting show. And I can't wait for you to come and support us next week at the same time on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Have a good day. I wish you all the best. Take care. Bye-bye.